Okay, so welcome back everyone. Today I'm going to try and actually start making the cup that is the basis of this project. So what we've got here is the nicely dried out 2.7 kilos of clay. We've set up a working area here. These two bits of wood are for measuring out a known thickness. So these are 9mm thick. And I'll use them to roll out the clay. What I'm going to use for that is this bit of poly pipe because it's available and free. These are about 5mm thick, so they'll be used if I actually need something a bit thinner. We've got a load of kids' clay tools and a very useful piece of rudimentary coiled pottery holding some of those tools there. That's coming quite handy really. The other thing I'm going to show you before we start is this. So with a little bit of the refined clay, I actually just pressed out this with my hands and fingers a couple of weeks ago, and it's been air drying for a couple of weeks, and I think it's come out really well. So I will retain that and fire that along with this cup when I finally make it. Initially I thought, okay, do I need to worry about the fact there's bits and holes and stuff in here like that, but given how that has turned out, and that was absolutely full of holes, I really don't think we need to worry. So that's given me a bit more confidence to proceed with stuff like this. So that's just a shallow bowl, could come in handy for some sort of thing in the future, but yeah, that will be fired along with this project. Okay, so I've rolled out a thickness of 9mm of this clay using the poly pipe, and now I'm going to mark out the cup base using the cup itself as a template. So we'll just press that in. That will give us a rough idea of how that needs to be. I'm going to take some other measurements while we're here. So we're talking about 9 centimeters high, and then circumference of about 26. Now, I mean, I've realised that this is going to be quite a complicated cup to fully replicate exactly, because it tapers in at the top, and it is obviously wider at the, well, it's not wider at the bottom, it's wider about a centimetre further up. So we're talking about something quite complicated. It's also quite a lot thinner than what I've got here. So let's keep it simple. Okay, so I've already cut out the piece for the base. Looking at it now, I think that's going to be too small. It is the same size as the base of this, but as we identified, it does taper out. So I'm going to proceed with this anyway, just because it's a learning exercise. And I've also rolled out another 9mm thick piece here, which will be for the sides of the cup. So to get the amount I need, what I'm going to do is make a mark just on the base there, and then make a known mark on the piece of clay, and then roll it out. Stop when we get back to the mark. Okay, make the mark there. I'll include a little bit extra. Not quite sure why, but I will. And then square it off with a straight edge. And I'll cut it out with a sharp knife. Back to the old trusty National Coiled knife. Use Mac the Knife McGregor to cut out a piece of clay, and then we can put these spare bits back in the bag and maybe use it for the handle or for something else. So there we go. Don't damage that. There we go. We've got a nice slab there, which I'll now score up on all the sides, maybe taper off these two edges so that they can join together, and then score it up on the here as well, and then join it together with a bit of water. Okay, so we're going to start putting this together now. I've scored up all the edges of this piece. I've done the same on all the edges that are to be joined, and I've tapered 45-degree cut on that edge, and on this edge the other direction. Slightly concerned this seems to be cracking up. Maybe I'll smooth it out with some some water and a sponge. Maybe it won't work. What I'm doing now is just putting water all around here, and I will do the same on this edge here. It might be due to the fact that I'm working outside in bright sunshine on a pretty hot day, so that may not be helping. But I think this is what we have to do. I might be completely wrong, and this might be a disaster. Maybe I could have rolled this around something. Okay, it's not actually big enough. Right, that's very frustrating. That is very annoying. So you see what's happened here? That is not big enough. Bugger. Right. Okay, I'm going to have to rethink this. Okay, this really has not worked very well at all. I did manage to join up the two pieces and I'll stick it together, but the rest of the piece is completely cracked and will be totally unusable. So I'm afraid I'm going to start again. Maybe it was too thick, maybe it's too dry, but what's clear is it ain't worked. Okay, so I've gone through a bit of a rethink here. I've used the tiles as depth gauges, which are a lot thinner. I've also thought that part of the reason that was cracking is probably because I was stretching it too far. So instead of just making it as the circumference that you want, make it a good deal longer. So you're not actually stretching the clay so far, and then you can always trim off. You can't add clay if it's too short, but you can trim it off if it's too long. So I'll do that. But in the meantime, I've also just made a little bit of sort of thumb pressed pottery here in the form of this this bowl, just so I've got something to show for it if it goes wrong again. Made in exactly the same way as this shallow bowl, which hasn't yet been fired. So I'll fire that in due course. Okay, things escalated a bit quickly here, so I just proceeded because it was going a little bit better than last time. As you can see, I've managed to join up a side and a base together using that sort of slab technique. Again, once again it is cracked, but it's not as bad as last time. So I'm just going to try and seal those up, like with a sponge or something like that, and see where that gets us. And it's progress. Okay, so that's how the so-called cup has come out, this one here on the left. I mean, there's lots of joins in it, lots of cracks. I'll try to smooth it out as best I can, and I think it's quite thin. And you can see lots of holes in it inside and that sort of thing. But I'm going to keep it as an experiment. The other thing I made, just pressed out with a thumb, looks a little more credible, if incredibly basic. Quite primitive, but I'm going to fire both of them and see where we get to. Okay, so I'm going to have another go at making the cup using the coiled pottery technique. What I've done so far is I've just wedged out by kneading a bit of clay. There's not a huge amount left, to be honest, from that original 2.7 kilos. I'll cut out a circle which is 6 to 8 mil thick, and I've pre-made 4 coils. I've scored up them, just put some slip on those joints, and then I'll start joining it together. The reason I'm doing this is because the slab technique, I just don't think my skills are quite there yet. So I expect that when I fire those, they'll blow up. But the coiled technique seems to be a good deal easier, certainly for a beginner. So I'm going to try this. Again, I've scored the coils themselves, and let's just start putting it together. once I've joined the two pieces together. Again, put a bit more slip on it. Or will that be enough? And then sort of get it to where you want it to be. And then prepare it for the next layer. Yeah, it's interesting that it's squashing down. It's probably not going to be very neat, is it? But it's worth a try. A bit more slip. I can see there's a cracking there. That said, the bit of slab work I made that did crack doesn't appear too bad once it's been drying out for a few days. So, it might work. Okay, I'm going to carry on with this for a bit. Okay, so we made some good progress here actually. Just producing coils and then stacking them on top. How many layers have we got now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this will be number 11, and I think that will be the last one because I'm running out of time available this afternoon, but also I'm also running out of clay, which is good because it shows that I've used everything that I managed to quarry effectively on my projects. So this will be the last one, and then I'll just quickly show you what I've been doing to smooth off the outside, just in order to bring up the height a little bit and make it watertight. So I've been using a sort of flat spatula with a bit of clay on it, and just drawing that up the outside of the work. Because I don't have a wheel or any sort of turnable platform, it does make it slightly complicated. But you just got to be careful when you pick up and move the work. The other thing to note is that when you add each coil, it does tend to compress the work, but when you do this, it brings it back up. So you will gain height. So that's why I'm not going to go any higher than this next coil, which will be the last one. And I'm doing the same thing inside as well, and that smooths it out inside. And I would say so far that this is the piece that I'm most confident about. It's nice and thick, got a nice thick base to it, and I've also been fairly thorough in my techniques. So let's hope that one stays together. Okay, well, here's the fruits of the labour. That's 11 coils worth of clay, a little handle made out of half a coil, and just run up the edge of it with this device here, and then brushed it a few times. It's quite thick. You can still see the coil marks inside. I don't know if that will be a problem, but it's definitely quite substantial and sturdy. I can pick it up and move it, and it stays in one piece. So I might come back in a few minutes and just give it a wipe round with the sponge when it has dried out a little bit more on the surface. But I think that might be what I'm going to go with. And yet the observant among you will notice it looks nothing like the drop of milk cup. But in the words of a famous song, you can't always get what you want. Okay, so it's about 4 or 5 weeks since I made the pieces of pottery, including this cup here, and I've noticed that as they've been drying out, a nasty crack has developed in that handle. I've done a bit of research and I've discovered that the reason for that is that I haven't added what's known as grog into the raw clay. Grog is stuff like sand perhaps, or broken pottery ground up that you add to the clay, and it just gives it a bit more strength so that when it dries out you don't get cracks like that happening. So what I'm going to do, there's a little bit of this clay left. There's about 400 grams remaining of the initial batch that I got. Yeah, about 400 when you take off the weight of that green thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up some grog, work it into this piece of clay and try and make something else. Now the only piece of pottery that I've already got is this thing I made here and fired some time ago. I don't really want to break it up, so what I have got a lot of is this stuff, which is broken handmade clay tiles. So I'm going to grind up some of that, work it into the clay and make something else. Okay, so here's some crushed up grog. Will it be enough for my 400 grams of clay? Don't know, but let's try and fold it in and see what happens. It can't be any worse than having none. Okay, I've now pressed all of that grog into what's left of the clay, and apart from going a slightly different colour, I can't really see any difference. Still lots of cracks in it and stuff, and lots of big bits of grog. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to press out a small piece of sort of pressed pottery and take it from there. So using the grogged clay, I made these two things here. I didn't do any pressed out pottery because it just didn't work. I tried to coil something and you can see that it is even worse than the non-grogged clay. I've no idea why. What's interesting is it does feel a bit heavier, which it would, but it's still full of cracks and everything. This is kind of slightly better. It's supposed to be a mobile phone holder, but I suppose you could put put a book in it or a bit of paper or something like that. Anyway, it's come out a bit better, but underneath it's still pretty cracked. So we'll see how they fire. I mean, this one held together, so can't be that bad. Okay, so this is the result of the grogged piece of coiled pottery. I actually wasn't happy with it, obviously, because it was pretty appalling. So I spent just 10 minutes going over the surface, actually with a wood chip, and it smoothed it down quite nicely. You can see that the grog wasn't particularly smooth because of how lumpy it is. That said, there's fewer cracks in this than there are in this, for example, which we've done without any grog at all. So there's just a tiny little crack there. What I'm going to do now with all of these pieces actually is a little technique called burnishing. I've started it already with this. This is just a small smooth stone from the beach. It was actually at Lulworth Cove down in Dorset, and I'm just going to rub the surface just to smooth down any high points. I'm going to do that on all of them, and then once they're nice and smooth inside and out as far as possible, then they'll all be ready for firing, and hopefully they'll end up a little bit nicer than this piece.